The HOA president looked me dead in the eye and said, "Your grandfather's pond is stealing water from my community," then slapped me with a $50,000 lien to destroy the place where I scattered my wife's ashes. So I stopped the theft and let her $1 million neighborhood wash away. Right now I'm standing in what used to be Cordelia Blackstone's perfectly manicured front yard, watching her wade through waist-deep floodwater in a $2,000 business suit, screaming at Channel 9 News while her white Tesla Model S drifts past her mailbox like the world's most expensive bathtub toy. The smell hits you like a slap, that thick cocktail of diesel fuel, rotting grass, and raw sewage that comes when Mother Nature reclaims what arrogant people thought they owned. See that soggy red paper she's clutching? That's the final notice she filed against my home 2 days ago. 50 grand, due immediately, or lose the property my family has owned since 1962, all because I wouldn't drain the natural spring pond that's been preventing exactly this flood for 60 years. Turns out when you mess with a grieving widower's sacred ground to spite your neighbors, physics doesn't give a damn about your HOA bylaws. What would you do if some power-drunk Karen tried to steal your family land and desecrate your spouse's final resting place over water your grandfather legally owned before she was even born? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I guarantee your HOA stories will make this look like a warm-up. My name's Marcus Rodriguez, but everyone calls me Tank, a nickname from my 25 years designing flood control systems with the Army Corps of Engineers. At 52, I figured I'd seen every kind of bureaucratic warfare the world could throw at me. Turns out, I hadn't met Cordelia Blackstone yet. 2 years ago, after Sarah lost her battle with cancer, I inherited my grandfather's 3-acre property in Pine Ridge Estates, Colorado. The place had been in our family since 1962, back when this was just mountain wilderness and a few scattered homesteads. Grandpa Miguel built everything by hand: the cabin, the workshop, and most importantly, the spring-fed pond, where Sarah and I scattered wildflowers every anniversary, and where I eventually scattered her ashes on a quiet October morning that still makes my throat close up. The pond wasn't some decorative lawn ornament. Grandpa understood water management better than most engineers I've worked with. He channeled the natural spring into a retention system that prevented flooding for the entire valley below. The gentle sound of water trickling over hand-stacked limestone always reminded me of Sarah's voice, soft but constant. Impossible to forget. The smell of wet stone and mountain pine made this place feel like sanctuary. That sanctuary got invaded the morning Cordelia Blackstone's white Tesla crunched up my gravel driveway like an Arctic predator stalking prey. Picture a woman assembled in some corporate laboratory, platinum blonde hair laser cut into a power bob, charcoal business suit that cost more than my annual property taxes, and the kind of smile that screams, "I eat small businesses for breakfast." She clicked across my gravel in stilettos that had no earthly business on mountain terrain, clutching a leather portfolio like it contained state secrets. The choking cloud of jasmine perfume that announced her arrival could have fumigated a warehouse. Think expensive funeral flowers mixed with industrial disinfectant. "Mr. Rodriguez?" She extended a hand that felt like shaking a mannequin's wrist. "Cordelia Blackstone, Pine Ridge Estates HOA president. We have a serious problem with your unauthorized water hoarding." I wrapped my calloused fingers tighter around my coffee mug, feeling the familiar groove where my wedding ring had worn smooth. "Excuse me?" She snapped open that portfolio with the precision of a bear trap. "This pond violates water management regulations implemented 6 months ago, while you were indisposed." The way she pronounced indisposed, like Sarah's death was some minor inconvenience, made my molars grind. "My grandfather built this pond in 1962, I said, keeping my engineers calm. 60 years before your regulations existed. Nevertheless, she slapped down papers with theatrical flair. All existing water features must comply with current community standards. You have 30 days to eliminate this. Installation. Here's where her plan got diabolical. See, while I'd been arranging Sarah's memorial service, Cordelia's husband Bradley, a city councilman who looked like he'd been extruded from a generic politician mold, had rammed through new HOA water regulations during an emergency session with zero community input. Every other pre-existing structure got grandfather clause protection. Every single one, except mine. The paperwork told the real story. Cordelia wasn't some concerned neighbor worried about community aesthetics. She was a predator. Her real estate business specialized in buying distressed properties from harassed homeowners, then flipping them to developers. My 3 acres, with natural water rights and elevated positioning, were the crown jewel that would unlock her $1 million luxury condo project. As evening shadows stretched across Sarah's pond, I watched the sunset paint ripples gold and crimson, the same colors that used to dance in her hair. I could practically hear her voice cutting through the mountain silence. "Tank, honey, you've never backed down from a fight when innocent people needed protecting." She was right. I'd spent 25 years outmaneuvering bureaucrats who thought engineering was just suggestion. Time to remind these people that water always finds the path of least resistance, and right now, that path led straight through their schemes. 3 days after Cordelia's ultimatum, she returned with backup that looked like amateur hour at Fraud Academy. Her pristine Tesla was followed by a beat-up Honda Civic held together with duct tape and delusion. Out stepped a skinny kid in an ill-fitting polo shirt clutching a clipboard like it contained nuclear launch codes. "Mr. Rodriguez, meet Derek Blackstone, our certified water usage inspector," Cordelia announced, flashing that razor-blade smile. The kid couldn't have been older than 25, and sporting nervous eyes and the kind of patchy facial hair that suggested testosterone, was still debating whether to show up for work. I crossed my arms, already detecting more bullshit than a cattle ranch in August. Certified by who exactly? "The Colorado Water Management Bureau," Derek squeaked, fumbling with laminated credentials that looked fresher than gas station sushi. Now, I'd worked alongside real federal water inspectors from the Rockies to the Gulf Coast. They roll up in government vehicles with official plates, carry equipment worth more than Derek's entire car, and definitely don't share Christmas dinner with the complainant. This kid's certification had more red flags than a Soviet parade. "Mind if I call the bureau to verify that number?" I asked, pulling out my phone with the casual confidence of someone who'd caught bureaucrats lying since Derek was in diapers. The color drained from his face faster than water through a busted dam. That's really not necessary. This is just preliminary." What followed was 60 minutes of comedy gold. Derek photographed my pond from every conceivable angle like he was documenting a crime scene, scribbled notes that would embarrass a kindergartner, and measured water depth with what was obviously a Home Depot yardstick. The stench of bargain basement fake leather from his briefcase mixed with clean mountain air like cheap cologne at a funeral home. My grandfather's voice echoed in my memory. "Mijo, when fancy-talking people bring official papers to steal your water, you check those papers twice and trust them never." The old man had survived the Depression by spotting con artists from 3 counties away. "Your professional assessment?" Cordelia asked, with the hungry anticipation of a shark tasting blood in the water. "Definitely unauthorized water retention," Derek declared with all the authority of a shopping mall rent-a-cop, plus potential mosquito breeding violations and, he squinted at his chicken scratch notes. "Excessive water accumulation beyond community standards." That's when Cordelia played her first real card, slapping down a violation notice stamped in blood-red ink. $5,000 penalty for unauthorized water theft from community resources. Water theft? I actually laughed out loud. From a spring that's been bubbling here since your great-grandmother was learning her multiplication tables? Individual property rights cannot supersede community welfare, she recited like she was reading from the HOA Testament, verse 12. The real gut punch came the next morning when my neighbor Frank shuffled over looking like he'd swallowed a porcupine. He handed me the Pine Ridge Gazette with shaking hands, pointing to page 3 where a headline made my breakfast taste like sawdust. "Local resident hoards water while neighbors face drought conditions." The hit piece painted me as some selfish hermit stealing life-giving water from hard-working families. Anonymous concerned residents worried about stagnant breeding pools creating health hazards, and my stubborn refusal to cooperate with reasonable community standards. They'd even photographed my crystal-clear spring pond from the muddiest angle imaginable, making it look like a cholera incubator. Reading that character assassination felt like getting punched in the gut by someone wearing brass knuckles dipped in poison ivy. Sarah would have been heartbroken seeing our sacred place dragged through the mud by people who wouldn't know clean water if it bit them on their surgically enhanced asses. But Cordelia had just made a tactical error that would have gotten her court-martialed in my army days. She'd declared war on someone who'd spent a quarter-century outmaneuvering bureaucrats with PhDs in creative paperwork. That afternoon, I drove to the county courthouse, a brick monument to legal warfare that smelled like decades of broken dreams and dusty justice. My military training had taught me that when politicians start waving regulations around like weapons, you'd better examine the ammunition before they blow your life apart. 3 hours of archaeological digging through property records revealed treasure more valuable than gold. My grandfather's original deed included perpetual spring water rights dating to 1962. Not just surface water, complete mineral and spring rights that predated their precious HOA by 3 full decades. Every drop flowing through my pond was legally, irrevocably, permanently mine. I called Jake Thornfield, my old Army Corps brother who'd traded his engineer's helmet for a law degree in environmental warfare. During our Afghanistan deployment, Jake had pulled me from a collapsed irrigation tunnel. Now he'd return the favor by digging me out of this legal hole. "Tank, you beautiful son of a bitch." Jake's voice rang with the joy of a lawyer spotting an easy win. "Perpetual water rights are legal kryptonite. They can't touch you." But Jake's deeper research revealed something that froze my blood colder than a Rocky Mountain blizzard. Bradley Blackstone owned Mountain Vista Development LLC, a shell company that had been systematically devouring longtime residents after crushing them with manufactured violations and crushing fines. My pond wasn't random harassment. It was the strategic keystone controlling water access for their entire multi-million-dollar development scheme. 2 weeks later, Cordelia escalated to full psychological warfare. The Pine Ridge Community Center buzzed with nervous energy as residents filed into the monthly HOA board meeting. The smell of burnt coffee and anxiety hung in the air like a toxic cloud. I walked in to find the room packed with faces I didn't recognize, young professionals in expensive athleisure wear who'd probably moved here last month and couldn't tell a natural spring from a swimming pool. Cordelia had clearly done her homework, stacking the deck with newcomers who'd swallow whatever story she fed them. "Ladies and gentlemen," Cordelia began, her voice dripping with manufactured concern, "we're facing a serious health crisis." She clicked a remote and the wall screen filled with what looked like a horror movie poster. My beautiful spring pond had been photoshopped into a green, scummy nightmare that could have doubled as a zombie apocalypse set piece. "These images document dangerous bacterial growth and mosquito breeding grounds," she announced to horrified gasps. "Independent testing confirms elevated levels of harmful microorganisms that threaten our children's safety." Independent testing, my ass. I'd been testing that water myself for 2 years with equipment that made Derek's yardstick look like a toothpick. The pond was cleaner than most city tap water, but try explaining that to people who'd already decided you were the neighborhood villain. Mrs. Henderson from down the road raised a shaky hand. "But hasn't that pond been there since—" "Property age doesn't exempt anyone from current health standards." Cordelia cut her off with surgical precision. "We have a responsibility to protect our community's welfare. The board voted unanimously to increase my fine to $15,000 plus $500 per day until compliance. But the real kick in the teeth came next. Trespass warnings that legally prevented me from accessing my own pond for safety reasons. Walking home through the crisp mountain air, I felt like I'd been mugged by people wearing suits and fake smiles. The sound of my boots crunching on gravel matched the rhythm of my grinding teeth. But here's the thing about being a combat engineer. You learn to think 3 moves ahead of people trying to blow up your day. That night, I installed a dozen trail cameras around my property perimeter, each one hidden with the kind of camouflage skills that had kept me breathing in hostile territory. Within 48 hours, those cameras paid for themselves in pure gold. The first jackpot came at 2:17 a.m. on a moonless Thursday. Derek Blackstone, still wearing that ridiculous polo shirt, crept onto my property, carrying a bucket that sloshed with every step. I watched him dump what looked like dead fish into my crystal-clear pond, then photograph the results with professional lighting equipment. The little bastard was manufacturing his own evidence. But the second recording made my blood pressure spike into the danger zone. At 3:45 a.m. the same night, Bradley Blackstone himself skulked around my property boundaries with 2 men in hard hats, pointing at survey stakes and discussing foundation requirements and water access easements. They weren't just harassing me, they were already planning to build on land they didn't own yet. The next morning, I called an emergency meeting of what I'd started thinking of as the original residents, folks who'd been here since before Cordelia turned our quiet mountain community into her personal real estate empire. Frank